From the News Channel 8 studios, Let's Talk Live with your hosts, Natasha Barrett and Melanie Hastings.
You know, it's final exam time for a lot of people. It's around the corner. So for many, it is stressful right now if you have kids.
Remember that.
Yes.
It was stressful. And educational expert Ann Dolin is here today. She's got some tips for calming those final exam jitters. Good to see you, Ann.
You too. Thanks.
Yeah, it's final exam time. It's time for all the papers to be written and gotten in and all those extra projects. And then you got, you know, the weather's getting warmer and the proms and graduation party. Everything's happening all at once.
Right. It's tough. It's tough. In fact, a student just told me this morning, this is the hardest time of year for me because I just don't want to think about school. I want to think about summer, but I know these grades really count, and that's the dilemma that kids are in.
So how do we reel them in as parents to keep them focused? Because there's so many things kind of, you know, taking their attention away.
You know, more than ever these days, kids are bombarded by text messages from their friends, music, video games, all those types of things. So it's really important as parents to, if this is really an issue, sit down with your child and just kind of open the discussion as what is impacting you. A lot of times kids will have this idea that listening to music helps them study. But research shows that actually listening to music while you're trying to study to recall something later, you know, you're studying something on Monday for a test on Thursday, that's really detrimental. And if kids push back against parents when maybe the parent offers them the suggestion of studying without music, sit down with your child and say, hey, why don't you try it both ways? Try studying on Monday with music, Tuesday without music, see how it goes for you, see if you can remember in different ways.
So the music, what is the music doing? Is it taking our attention half away?
It is. It is, especially the music with lyrics. You know, the music where kids are listening to the latest lyrics, they're trying to memorize a song, or, you know, even if it's something that they're familiar with, it's still somewhat distracting. But in general, familiar music is better than new music, you know, a new song that just came out, but still music in general is not good for long-term retention on tests.
So you say to talk it out with your kids and kind of try to broker a deal there, because that, what you described, usually for some people ends up in an argument.
It does.
Especially with teenagers.
Yeah.
Like, don't tell me what to do. This is what works for me. You've probably heard that, right?
I have. And, you know, sometimes I hear that from my own kids. And I say to them, you know what, you're right. This is probably a really dumb idea. And you might not want to even try it at all. But for what it's worth. And sometimes if you pose it like that, like, I don't have all the answers, but here's an idea. See if it works for you. It's better off than saying, hey, you should do this, because no kid ever wants to be told what to do.
Sounds like it's all in the approach there.
It really is, yeah.
Or what about reading? I mean, a lot of the assignments are about reading, and part of that is comprehending what you're reading. Do you have tips for kids?
Sure. You know, I'd say that's another mistake that kids make when studying for tests is they think that reading is studying. But a better idea than just sitting down and reading through your book is actually Skyping with somebody and having somebody on the other side of that screen. I know it sounds crazy, but really when you discuss what you're reading, you're going to remember it far better than if you just read alone. So sometimes parents say, oh no, that's a bad idea. I don't want my child doing that. But actually it really helps kids to hear the information in a different way, and they're more likely to retain it that way too.
Let's talk about putting it off, procrastination. Some people say, oh, listen, I work better when I do it, you know, the night before, I get it all in. How do you deal with that if you have a child that likes to do it last minute and maybe it hasn't worked out? Where do you begin?
It really varies for younger kids and older kids. For younger kids, it's really easy to sit down and say, oh, you have a big math test on Friday. How can you break this out? Let's talk about how you're going to piecemeal this a little bit each day. That's easy. It's harder when you have a teenager because, again, those kids aren't going to really listen to your methodology much. So for those students, often I recommend an app called I Procrastinate. And a lot of kids have it on their phones these days. And it's a pretty cool app that sends them text message reminders, and it's also color-coded. So when they see a big pink message coming over, start this in 5 minutes, okay, now it's time to get started, they're much more likely to do it, and it's better than the parent always trying to push down hard on the student.
And what they're on that phone, they're on whatever, it's technology, so maybe they'll respond to it a little better.
Who knew there was such an app? I didn't.
Oh, it's
great. They say there's an app for everything, isn't there? They thought of everything.
Now what about, you know, helping your child with, sometimes those writing essays can be really difficult for kids. They just haven't gotten the knack of it yet. I mean, is that something that you would recommend parents helping the child with?
Depends on the age. You know, again, younger students, most definitely, because they don't really know how to answer essay questions. And they're much more willing to listen to a parent. Older kids, not as much. But the mistake older kids make is that they think, an essay question, I either know it or I don't, and I can't really study. And that is completely untrue. So what I often encourage kids to do is try to think like you're the teacher. What are 5 questions you think your teacher might ask on the essay part of the test? Write out those questions and then have 3 to 4 bullet points underneath with facts that can help you support your answer. That's really all you need to do. You don't need to write out every single question you think the teacher is going to ask. Kids will be resistant. It takes too much time. But just having a general idea of how you will respond in bullet points really helps kids.
Now, we've all heard people say, I'm a different kind of learner. I'm a visible learner, an audible learner, and it's true. People pick up things in different ways. So if you're going to sit down and you want to quiz your kids and do certain ways, what are some examples of ways to practice for different kinds of learners?
Sure. Well, quizzing your child is perfectly fine, especially when they're younger, but when they're older, you kind of want them to work a little bit more independently. So the auditory learner is going to be great reciting things out loud to himself, even walking around, reciting, asking himself questions, going over the study guide out loud. That's great for an auditory learner. Visual learners are the kids that are going to do really well reviewing their notes, maybe making a diagram out of the information or drawing a picture for specific topics that they have to remember. And then those kinesthetic learners, those hands-on type of learners, those are going to be the kids that are going to do well in study groups like Skype, or even meeting with a small group at the library is a great idea for kinesthetic learners.
Lots of good tips there, Anne. Let's hope the kids all listen to and the parents too.
We shall see.
Yes, we shall. Thanks for coming in today, Anne.